A very good day to all of you. In the lesson today, we are going to talk about the past tenses. So, as we all know, there are a number of tenses that can be referred to as the past tenses other than simple past tense. So, in the lesson today, we are going to take a look at the differences in terms of the usage of these different past tenses. So the very first one would be the very common simple past tense, and then we are going to talk about past continuous tense, and then next past perfect tense, and the last one would be past perfect continuous tense. So there are four tenses altogether that is under the past tense. The first one is simple past tense, next is past continuous tense, or we also refer to past continuous as past progressive tense, past perfect tense, and past perfect continuous tense, or past perfect progressive tense. So let us take a look at the first one, which is simple past tense, and then later we will talk about the differences between these tenses and when to use them. So the main reason why we are talking about the differences between these tenses is because we want to know which situation, what is the right situation to the right tense. So when we speak, we'll have to make sure our grammar is accurate, and when we have tenses, the tense, they have their own specific situation when to be used. So first, let us take a look at simple past tense. So this is basically the chart for simple past tense. So we have a timeline here, past, present, and future. So when we talk about simple past tense happen in the past. So when we have a situation that happened only in the past and also have been completed in the past, so we use simple past tense. So as you can see here on the chart, it is marked in the realm of the past. So that is simple past tense, something that happened and has finished in the past. So one example of simple past tense is when we say MH370 departed on March 2014. So here we use simple past tense of the word depart, which is departed. So because it happened one time in the past. So this is 8th of March 2014. Next example would be, for example, my journey to Sabah took me 2 hours. So here we have a simple past tense of the word take. So here, so this is an action that happened in the past, a situation that happened in the past. So when it happened in the past and it is completed in the past, we use simple past tense. We can also talk about several actions that happen in the past. For example, when we say the train made several stops along the way. So let's say you went for a vacation on a train. So you say the train made several stops along the way. So you are talking about the past. So also you have, although you have several stops, so these are the actions that happen in the past, no longer happening in the present. So it happened one time in the past. So we use simple past tense. So that is simple past tense. We use simple past tense when we are talking about a situation that happened in the past. So another example would be my friend passed away 5 years ago, for example. So you use past tense in the word pass away, P-A-S-S-E-D. So my friend passed away 5 years ago. So it happened 5 years ago. So with simple past tense, normally you use words like yesterday, 2 days ago, last week, last month, in 2010, in 2008, in 1950. So those are the words that you use with simple past tense because they show that the action happened in the past. So for example, a simple example would be I cook rice yesterday. So cook is past tense because you have yesterday. And my friend passed away 5 years ago. So pass away is past tense. Or you can also put a year here in 2015, for example. So that is simple past tense. Now let us take a look at present past continuous tense. So what is the difference between simple past tense and past continuous tense? So if simple past tense, it happened one time in the past. Past continuous tense, you use past continuous tense when you are talking about a situation that was in the process of happening in the past, not in the present, because that would be present continuous tense, but something that was in the process of happening, but in the past, not in the present or not in the future. So an example of past continuous tense would be, for example, I was doing my assignment when she called me. So when you have past continuous tense, normally what you have is was or were plus ing. So that is the rule for past continuous tense. Another example would be they were swimming happily in the lake. So you are talking about something that happened in the past and you are referring to these people. They were in the process of swimming happily in the lake. So was or were plus ing. So that is for past continuous tense. So what is the difference between past continuous tense and simple past tense? So you can say, and it is correct to say, I did my assignment, or they swam happily in the lake. But when you use past continuous tense, your focus would be to tell people that you were in the process of doing something, or they were in the process of swimming. So when you say they were swimming, the situation would be they were in the process of swimming. But when you say they swam or they swim, it is a fact what happened. But when you say they were swimming, your focus is you want to tell people that they were in the process of doing something, which was swimming. So you can use simple past tense. You can also use past continuous tense, but the focus, the situation is different. So when you use past continuous tense, the situation, the focus is to tell people that you were in the process of doing something, or they were, or someone or something was in the process of doing something in the past. So it could be yesterday, many days ago, in a certain year. So that is past continuous tense. So when you were asking a question, so you can also use past continuous tense to ask a question. For example, what were you doing when you heard about the news? So what were you doing? So this is past continuous tense. So the answer could be I was eating. So this is also present past continuous tense. You can also use simple past tense. It is correct, but the focus would be different. For example, when you say, what did you do when you heard about the news? So the answer would be I ate breakfast, for example. So this is simple past tense. What did you do? So both questions can be used, but the focus is different. So the focus here is you were in the process of doing something. The focus here is on the what did you do? What was the fact about what did you do in the past? So the focus when you use past continuous tense is to tell people that you were in the process of doing something. Or when you ask a question, you are asking about what were people doing. That means what process of doing were they in during that particular period of time. So the same goes to simple past tense. When you ask a question, you don't use do or does, but you use the word did, because we are talking about simple past tense. So did you go to school yesterday? So the answer would be yes, I did, or yes, I did not. So did you go to school yesterday? So when you after the word did, do or does, the verb has to be in the root word, in the base form. For example, when you say he goes to school. So when you ask a question, you say, did he go to school? So that means after the word did, it has to be in the base form. So now we have talked about simple past tense, past continuous tense. Now let us talk about past perfect tense. So what is past perfect tense? So we use past perfect tense in our speech, in our sentence, when we have a situation where there are two things that happen in the past. So when we have two things that happen in the past, the one that happened before is past perfect tense, and the one that happened later is in simple present tense. So one example is, I had finished cooking when my parents arrived. So you are talking about this situation, and this situation happened maybe yesterday or last week. So it happened in the past, maybe yesterday or last week or last month, or maybe 2 days ago, or could be any time in the past. So you have two things that happen in the past. First, you had finished cooking, and second, your parents arrived. So if you take a look at this sentence, which one happened first and which one happened later? So finish cooking first and then the parents arrived. So because finish cooking happened first, you use past perfect tense. So when you have a past perfect tense, you have the word had plus past tense or past participle. And the one that happened later, which is this one, is simple past tense. So the one that happened earlier, this situation would be past perfect tense. So you use past perfect tense. Let's say if you have a situation when you have two things that happen in the past, and you want to mention in a sentence. So in that situation, you use past perfect tense. So what is the rule for past perfect tense? You have the word had plus past participle. For example, she had eat. So past participle, when you say eat, the past tense is ate and the participle is eaten. So the same goes to drive, drove, and driven. So she had driven. She had forgiven. So you take the third form. So that is participle. But if you have ed or d, it is the second form. For example, celebrate becomes celebrated. So I had celebrated. So she had eaten all the food by the time her friends arrived. So there are two things that happened in the past. Because this one happened first, we have past perfect tense. So she had eaten. So the situation that happened before this one. So other example would be, for example, when we say the car had broken before it could make its way to the workshop. So the car had broken. So broken happened first, so it is past perfect tense. And then before it could make its way to the workshop. Also, if you want to stress that if something that happened in the past and it has totally finished in the past, yes, you can, although you don't have two things that happen in the past. For example, when you say my grandfather had died 20 years ago. So my grandfather had died 20 years ago. You only have one thing that happened in the past because it is perfected. It is completed. No longer will happen. So it has completed in the past. So you want to stress that the person had died 20 years ago. So you can also say, use present perfect tense. My grandfather had died 20 years ago. And one last example would be by the time the rescue ship arrived, all of the passengers were already dead. So here we have two things that happened in the past. First is had already died. Had already died. So we have two things that happened in the past. So one is had died. So the people died first and then the rescue ship arrived. So we have two things that happen in the past. So when we have a past perfect tense, the formula is you have had plus past participle. Now let us move on to past perfect continuous tense. So what is past perfect continuous tense? So it is similar to past perfect tense where you have two things that happen in the past. Past perfect continuous tense, also you have two things that happen in the past. But for past perfect continuous tense, the past action that happened first was continuous. So as compared to past perfect tense, we have two past tenses. But in past perfect continuous tense, we have the continuous that happened first and then the past tense. So two things that happened in the past, similar, but the one that happened first were in the process of happening. It was progressive. So let us take a look at a couple of examples of past perfect continuous tense. One example is the Titanic had been traveling for 4 days when it hit an iceberg. So the Titanic had been traveling for 4 days when it hit an iceberg. So if you take a look at this sentence, how many actions happened in the past? So first we have the Titanic had been traveling, and then the second action that happened was it hit the iceberg. So because the Titanic had been traveling, were in the process of traveling and then hit an iceberg, we call it as past perfect continuous because it is a continuous action. So the Titanic had been traveling. So traveling is continuous. It is progressive. It is happening in the past and then something else happened. So with past perfect continuous, the formula is you have had plus been plus ing. So had been cooking, had been living, had been driving. So had plus been plus ing. Another example would be I had been living a good life for many years until you came. So we have two things that happened in the past. First, I had been living. So I had been living for many years. I had been living a good life. So it is a progressive action. And then something else happened until you came. So things become not as how I wish, because there are a lot of troubles. So two things that happened in the past. I had been living. It is a continuous action, so we call it as past perfect continuous. And then the other one is simple past tense. So one last example would be by the time Azhar Mansour arrived in Langkawi, he had been traveling for more than a year. So by the time Azhar Mansour arrived in Langkawi, so one we have arrived as the action, and the other one had been traveling. So which one happened first? So he had been traveling first, and then he arrived. So he had been traveling for more than a year. So that means it was a process of traveling and then arrived. So because this one happened first and it was progressive, it was continuously happening in the past, had been traveling and then arrived in Langkawi. So if you have a situation like this, when you are talking to your friend, make sure you use the correct tense, which is past perfect continuous tense. So the same goes to other tenses like past perfect tense, past continuous tense, and simple past tense. So in the lesson, we have covered the past tenses, including simple past tense, past continuous tense, past perfect tense, past perfect continuous tense. So thank you very much for your attention. See you again in the other video.